Republican Congressman Ken Buck. Congressman, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So as Garrett just reported, Jim Jordan is huddled meeting with some holdouts on Capitol Hill. You, of course, are one of those holdouts. You're not there. You're here. Is that a sign that your vote is not gettable?
I am not going to change my vote on Jim Jordan. I'm happy to meet with him. I'm happy to meet with Patrick McHenry, Kevin McCarthy, anybody that wants to meet and talk. I think the best move is for Jim to withdraw at this point. I think he may need another vote to be convinced that he's not going to get there, which is fine. He was the nominee. The conference should give him that respect. But I think at some point we need to move on and find the 217 votes for a plan. And
just to be clear, will you attend that meeting? Let's assume it's still ongoing once this conversation finishes. Will you go and listen to what he has to say?
Oh, absolutely. He's meeting with folks individually, so I just kind of moved my time slot along so I could meet with him, but I absolutely will go and meet, yeah.
Let's talk big picture here. You heard Garrett make this point that I thought was interesting. He said that the momentum for McHenry is essentially toast. Is that how you see it? Do you think that McHenry is not going to be the Speaker pro tem? Because just to reset the table here, there had been this plan, I guess, C at this point, right, to give him more powers, but you all would need to vote to do that. Is that something you would support, or do you think that effort's done?
Well, I agree that it can't happen as a bipartisan effort. We have to have 217 votes before we leave conference for one candidate or for Patrick McHenry as a temporary candidate. I think it would be politically unwise to try to go back to a base and say, give us the votes, give us the money, give us the resources to win elections after we had to use the Democrats to make the House floor functional. So I think there will be that realization when Jim Jordan decides to step away.
And would you, just to put a fine point on it, would you support McHenry if you could get 217 Republican votes? You would give him a vote for expanded authority, essentially.
Well, I would give him a vote to be the Speaker of the House for a temporary time period. And I would, during that time period, work very hard with my Republican colleagues to try to find the 217 votes to make sure that we have a permanent Speaker for the rest of this Congress.
But you're not going to do it with Democratic support. It has to be Republicans finding that path on their own.
I believe that's right. And I think that's a general feeling in the conference.
Let's talk about what happened at that meeting today, because apparently there was some reporting that McCarthy shouted at Matt Gaetz to sit down. Were you in that meeting? What did you witness?
I was there for 3.5 hours, Kristen. It was painful. Kevin McCarthy went to the microphone several times, and as the person who was last speaker was granted the ability to speak as often and as long as he wanted to. Matt Gaetz got up and wanted to make a point. Kevin told him to sit down. At that point, tempers started flaring a little bit. It was no more than a minute and a half of a 3.5-hour meeting, but there was some tempers, clearly, and I think after that point in time, people backed down again. And part of the reason that there's temper right now is this constant barrage of phone calls. I have 6 full-time people answering the phones. I have 20,000 messages from people where we couldn't. So far, I've had 4 death threats. I've been evicted from my office in Colorado. I have notice of an eviction because the landlord is mad with my voting record on the speaker issue. And everybody in the conference is getting this. So it's natural. Family members have been approached and threatened. All kinds of things are going on. There's going to be some tension.
4 death threats, Congressman, because you're not supporting Jim Jordan?
That's right.
And, of course,
I want to, if I can, make something absolutely clear. This is not Jim Jordan's fault, and I'm not suggesting at all that it is.
And he has been very clear about that.
This is, there are a lot of TV pundits, there are a lot of radio pundits, there are a lot of grassroots groups that are putting out misinformation and hateful information, and it just stirs people up. And there are a lot of people that are scared about the direction of this country, and they're taking this to heart.
Given that, and you are not the only congressman, as you say, to receive these threatening texts and phone calls and emails. What does that say about the state right now of the House of Representatives? I mean, some people are looking at this from the outside and saying it feels broken right now, Congressman. Do you feel that way?
Politics is downstream from the reality that we have in this country. And we have a country that is very divided at this point. What we need to do in Congress is to make sure we don't throw some gasoline on that fire. We need to make sure that we are talking in ways that soothe the tensions and not inflame the tensions.
Given where you are right now, given that it has been so many days without a Speaker of the House, do you regret voting to oust Speaker McCarthy?
I don't. I regret the fact that we didn't solve this problem during the first 15 votes, that it took a lot of promises to a lot of different groups to get to the Speaker vote in January. That's what I regret. I think if we had had more consensus at the beginning, we wouldn't have gotten into this point. I voted the way I did because I think that the spending in this country is an existential threat. I made my point. Now we need to move on, get a Speaker, and govern.
You have signaled you would support Congressman Emmer for Speaker of the House, and yet he's someone who supported the CR that Speaker McCarthy signed off on. So would he have done anything differently?
Oh, I don't know if he would have. I think what he would have done differently is to have an initial conversation where we didn't have 4 or 5 different numbers floating around the conference as promises. This is what we're going to spend. I think that's what Tom would do differently. But I'd support Kevin Hern. I'd support a lot of people for this position. Do
you know very quickly who that next person up will be if it doesn't go to Jim Jordan? And let's say, hypothetically, McHenry does become Speaker pro tem for the next 30 days. Who would be that next person up at bat?
I think what you're going to see is 4 or 5 people run, but I also think that Scalise was an automatic and Jordan was an automatic. Now you're going to see the conference actually have discussions about qualities and move forward.
Congressman, I have to ask you this because I've spoken to so many Republicans in the House, in the Senate, outside of Congress, who say they are really worried that this is going to cost Republicans your majority in the House, your hard-fought majority. How much does that concern you? Do you think you're giving up your majority day by day?
I think the majority was in jeopardy long before this, and I think it will be in jeopardy based on the presidential races and who the candidate is at the top of the ballot. So I don't think that people are going to look at this and say, I voted against a Republican because of what happened a year 13, 14 months ago.
Well, let me put it another way. Do you think Republicans can hold on to your majority in the House in the wake of this? What's the argument to show that Republicans can govern?
Well, I absolutely think they can. And the critical piece is, do we pass appropriations bills? Do we do what we need to do to secure the world? Do we do things that make sense and show a contrast with the other party?
Congressman Buck, thank you for joining us on what is a very busy day for you. We appreciate it. Great to see you. Thank you.